What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at The Crawling Eye. Let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. The Crawling Eye is one of those late 50s, early 60s cheesy sci fi monster movies. It has a plot in which it has a very simple plot that's not hard to follow. It has actors who do their best job to make this story come to life. And that's pretty much all I can say about The Crawling Eye. The overall story to the movie is there's this UN troubleshooter named Alan Brooks who goes to Switzerland to investigate a series of killings that's been happening, along with his professor friend. It's revealed that there's this giant radioactive cloud that's hovering over the Swiss town of Trollenberg, and when we get to the end of the movie, we find out what's inside this cloud, which is this ginormous squid-like monster with numerous tentacles and a giant eye right at the center. And that's pretty much what the monster looks like. It's actually a really cool, striking design that when you see it, you're not going to forget it. Uh, Actually, that's like that's my biggest compliment with this movie. That the monster itself is visually striking and will pretty much resonate with you because you ain't gonna forget the image of this ginormous squid-like creature with a ginormous eyeball smack dab in the center of it. Uh, I thought everything else in this movie was decent. The actors they all do a serviceable job. You ain't gonna be getting quality acting in a movie like this, but you're gonna get solid acting from solid actors. I like the performances in this movie, though I think some of them can be very, very melodramatic and over the top. Particularly this one performance by one of the actresses who plays like a psychic. I think her mannerisms are a little too hammy and theatrical for my viewing. But in the context of this movie, that hammy over the top acting kind of sort of works, and I don't mind it at all. Honestly, uh, the characters themselves are very thinly written. They don't really have much personalities. I mean, the actors try to give them some personalities, but if you want a movie where you're gonna like get to know who these characters are and get to see these characters bond and have relationships, this ain't the movie for you. These characters mostly are here to just shout out expositional dialogue just to move the story along. This ain't a movie where we're gonna see characters just chilling, having a drink, and getting to know one another. That's not what this movie's all about. It's all about going from plot point A to plot point B. And in terms of doing that, I think the movie accomplishes it to the best of its abilities. Me personally, I would have liked to actually get to know these characters more. This is not the Wolfman where we get to know who Lawrence Talbot is. We get to know who the characters that inhabit that world. The Crawling Eye is not that kind of movie. If I were to make a comparison to The Crawling Eye to a movie that I think is much better, that's Thing from Another World. That movie has a more intriguing story, and that movie has more memorable characters and more snappy dialogue to it, as compared to this movie, which is very stock and very, very basic in terms of its dialogue. Now, not saying that it's bad, but I'm also not saying that you're not gonna remember these characters. You're just gonna remember the monster. And in terms of having a monster that's memorable and that stays with you, that's what this movie accomplishes. Uh, so in terms of that, it is what it is. From a production and technical level, I think this is a really well made, well shot movie. I thought the director Quentin Lawrence did a great job at creating this very gothic atmosphere, a very foreboding atmosphere, since this movie takes place in the Trollenberg Mountains. So you're not by any sort of civilization. You're in this very enclosed type of area. So I like all that. I like how this was one of the early movies to actually see some like pre-gory effects. Like there's a scene where we see a body without a head, and there's a scene where we see a severed head instead of a backpack. So like this movie was one of those early horror sci-fi movies that actually show some pretty gory violence, but it was still very, very tame. But the fact that it did it, I can appreciate it, and I can also see the influence that this movie has had on other horror movies. Like at the end of the day, this movie is kind of like a precursor to John Carpenter's The Fog. It has a monster that's in a cloud for most of the movie, and we don't know what the what and we don't know what why people start mysteriously dying whenever they come into contact with this cloud. The same is like in John Carpenter's The Fog, where the threat is not the pirates in the fog, but it's the fog itself. So you can see how this movie influenced the fog. So in that aspect, The Crawling Eye is a very influential sci-fi horror movie. I don't think it's going to be memorable for its characters or for its dialogue, but it is going to be remembered for its monster, for its gothic visual atmosphere, and for just for the pop cultural and just the what's the word I'm looking for, the blueprint that it pretty much set for science fiction horror movies to come after this. I think The Crawling Eye deserves to get some more recognition and more accolades in terms of that aspect. But if I were to take pretty much all that away, this is just a fun, entertaining sci-fi monster movie. It has characters who are not the best, but it has actors who at least try to give them personalities and make them likable, even though we don't get to know who they are. But like I said, this movie is more of a visual experience for the monster than it is about going into the heads of these characters and telling a very interesting story. It's just a basic monster movie, and at that, I think it does a good job. Though I do think the first 30 to 40 minutes can be a little bit slow, and the monster does not come to like the last 10 minutes. I think the movie should have had the monster come more at that 40-minute mark as opposed to the pretty much last 15 minutes of the movie. I think it would have raised the stakes more higher now that we know what's inside the cloud instead of waiting for so long. That's just what I would have done personally. But when all is said and done, The Crawling Eye for me gets a solid 6.5 out of 10. I do recommend it if you're a fan of black and white movies and just a fan of those early sci-fi monster movies. It is a heavy recommendation, and you will like it. It is decent it is a very overall decent, fun little flick. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Crawling Eye. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like this video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.